Wait, Luke, what do you mean by the title? Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is actually good. I thought you were a fan of the MCU. Did you not expect it to be a good movie? I'll get there. I haven't made a video in a while because I had to finish up a semester of college, but here's a video now. And so the title is Doctor Strange 2 because that's the biggest and most recent thing to come out, I think. Also, it's probably the thing I have the most to say about. But there's a few other pieces of media that I saw in April, and I'm going to cover those first in case anybody wants to hear my thoughts. So let's get into that. Morbius is really bad. Like, it's probably the new textbook example of a crappy superhero movie. One thing that jumped out at me is they set up a conflict where Mr. Morbius, the pseudo-vampire, will eventually need real blood, but he doesn't want to kill people because he's a doctor. And then they don't resolve this by the end of the movie. We don't find out how he's getting his blood needs satisfied. This is the central conflict of the movie, and it just goes completely unresolved. Anyway, Matt Smith is actually doing a fun performance as the villain. I don't remember the character's name. The post-credit scene was one I initially appreciated because it had a character that I like, but in hindsight, it's kind of stupid. The whole movie is kind of stupid. At least it's kind of a funny meme now. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore is also not that great. I know people like the first movie because it has charming moments, and people don't like the second movie because of its absolutely ridiculous storytelling. I think this one's about in the middle of the first two in terms of quality because it has both some of the charm of the former and also some of the nonsense of the latter. Like a few examples, I really enjoyed the character of Lally Hicks. She has all the quirks I think a magic professor would have. I also just realized that her actress was the teacher in Booksmart. I really like Booksmart. Anyway, also Jacob Kowalski is still the best character. On the negative side, the reveal of how Credence is related to Dumbledore is dumber than anything anybody could have predicted. And speaking of Dumbledore, the convoluted plot of this movie is focused on a magic animal that bows to people it wants to win the big wizard election. Well, at the end of the movie, the animal bows at Albus, which is just a complete misunderstanding of the entire point of Albus's character. I used to be quite a big Harry Potter fan, but I'm definitely not anymore. I don't really care for J.K. Rowling's personal beliefs, and now I'm finding it kind of difficult to care much about her silly little wizarding world. I saw The Northman. I have a kind of funny story about my theater experience with this one. So after the credits started rolling, I overheard these two dudes talking about the movie, and their conversation went something like this. Bro, I can't believe Anya Taylor-Joy did that nude scene. Yeah, I knew she was gonna, that's why I wanted to go see this. Well, that guy seemed to enjoy the movie. Did I? I guess. I feel like I can compare this to Django Unchained. They're both revenge movies by directors with a style. I like both movies, but for both I feel like the pacing gets a bit sloppy towards the end. I do appreciate Robert Eggers' directing though. It's weird and spooky and it's in a different time period. I'm a fan of the director. So yeah, not a bad movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once is probably the best movie we'll get this year, and because of that I really don't want to spoil much. My one criticism is that I felt the climax was kind of drawn out, but it was still decently emotionally investing. For positives, the action is great, fun and creative martial arts. The acting is great. I'm really impressed with Ke Huy Quan's performance. The movie is hilarious, and it's overall really imaginative, so go see it. So there's a live-action Mystery Incorporated show on YouTube. It's supposed to be a darker, more mature reimagining of ScoobyDoo. Literally no one asked for this. The actors look way old, the dialogue is fairly cringy, and the special effects are passable considering the budget, but not actually that scary. So I don't like it? Nah, I'm way too much of a fan of Scooby-Doo to not enjoy this thing. The creators clearly have some passion for the franchise. The actress playing Velma is actually doing a pretty good job. The dog playing Scooby is a very good boy. And there's so many fun references to the cartoon. They got the Minor 49er, Wowie Zowie. The Hex Girls make their first live-action appearance and lip-sync to the song from the first animated movie they were in. They got this minor character from the obscure 80s Scooby-Doo cartoon to be Shaggy's drug dealer. Come on! This first episode is so beautifully goofy. I think the only way I can possibly describe the show is delicious garbage, and I can't wait for more. So the last thing to talk about is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I like the MCU, but I really wasn't sure if I was going to like this movie. I do like it actually, but I want to explain why I didn't have the greatest expectations. Spider-Man. He joined the MCU back in 2016, and Tom Holland's iteration quickly became my favorite character in the franchise. He got a couple movies of his own, and they became some of my favorites of the MCU. And then we got No Way Home. While I feel like my opinion on that movie gets more positive as time goes on, I still don't like it that much. It starts off like a normal enough MCU Spider-Man movie, picking up where Far From Home left off, and then Doctor Strange is here. He's gonna cast a magic spell and ScoobyDoo this crowd. Wow, they got Dr. Octopus to show up. The power of the sun in the palm of my hand. Electro is here. Jamie Foxx is so cool. There's also a Sandman and a lizard. Green Goblin is the main villain. He's something of a scientist. Aunt May walks off an injury so she can say the famous line, then she dies right after. Yay! Andrew Garfield is playing Spider-Man again. He sure is amazing. Tobey Maguire is also back. Get it back? Haha, Raimi memes. Ha! Look, now Peter is making everybody forget him. What a satisfying ending that makes so much logical sense. I guess I just feel with that movie, the creators prioritized silly multiversal shenanigans over a story I could really appreciate. For example, like it or not, this iteration of Spider-Man is very tied to Iron Man, so I was disappointed when that aspect of the character was basically dropped. Anyway, back to Doctor Strange. He also debuted in 2016. His origin movie is fine, but I really like how his character fits into Infinity War and Endgame. Also, he had the best episode of What If. So I was excited to see more of him. But this new movie is also about the multiverse, so I really didn't want that to detract from telling a good story. Fortunately, it didn't. I think it tells a good story and is overall pretty neat for a variety of reasons. First of all, the movie is directed by Sam Raimi. Most people only know that he did the old Spider-Man movies, but he's made other cool stuff that I want to check out now. He's a good director. He incorporates a lot of moving camera work, which I think is pretty fun. He also made somewhat of a horror movie. The MCU hasn't dabbled much into outright scary stuff before. Like, I personally think that the Loki show got a bit spooky towards the end, but that's probably just me. WandaVision had some spookiness, though. But Multiverse of Madness is probably the most horror-centric so far. The gore didn't bother me. I'm kind of desensitized to that stuff for the most part, but some of the jump scares actually got me a bit. It's still definitely a superhero movie first, horror movie second, but the fact that it's both is cool. So the multiverse gets explored in this movie, and that means an opportunity for cameos from certain characters fans want to see. There is a scene that has quite a few little cameos, but I don't mind it because Doctor Strange himself doesn't know or care who these characters are, and I think that's an invitation for the audience not to take their appearance in the movie super seriously. What I think is more interesting is seeing different new versions of Strange himself. They're all slightly different, but they share certain traits like arrogance, and being able to compare them makes the main Doctor Strange a compelling character. I actually think most of the character dynamics in this movie are pretty good. The direction they take Wanda in for this movie is a little bold, but it does make sense based on where she was in WandaVision. Elizabeth Olsen is a great actress, and she's doing a really good job here as a principal character in the story. America Chavez is a character with unique powers and a decently memorable personality. I think Strange works well as her mentor figure, and I liked his motivational words to her at the climax. Strange's relationship with Christine Palmer is a lot more compelling in this movie. The main universe Christine has gotten married to someone else, so the question isn't like will they, won't they, it's why couldn't they? And again, I think encountering other variants of the characters allows the characters and audience to really ponder that question. I also noticed character work with just Strange himself. I mentioned how it's interesting to compare him to his variants, but I also think it's interesting to think about how he's changed as a character over the course of the movies he's been. He was more of a side character in some of them, but I think now that he's a main character in a movie again, I can see the development he went through. Lastly, I want to talk about my favorite scene, in a vague, non-spoilery way. It's towards the end, Doctor Strange has to figure out a solution to a problem, and the cool thing is, the way the scene plays out, you can pick up on what's going to happen before the solution is actually revealed. That's because the solution is something that was established earlier in the film. I freaking love scenes like this in movies. They perfectly balance being predictable and being satisfying. They make the whole movie feel clever, and I think that's a good and fairly unique quality for a film to have. So yeah, I liked Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I think it's a pretty neat movie. It's probably my favorite MCU movie since Spider-Man Far From Home, and I'm happy I like the movie so much. It's sometimes tempting to get tired of the MCU given the sheer volume of content to keep track of, but when movies like this one come out, they remind me why I enjoy the franchise.